Get the cream, precious metals or the crypto things. Your bars are light like the one that's on a Smith machine. But my Maxwell and I ain't speaking about the pretty.
Oh me, oh my I. So I decided out of nowhere I'm going to do this video because why not? Now, NXT did an all-women show on Tuesday. I think it was May the 10th or something like that. Don't quote me on the date. It don't matter. But it was the worst rated NXT show of the year, probably in its entire run on national television. I believe they did 533,000 viewers and about a 0.10 in the ratings. A wrestling website called The Sportster then came out about last week before the All Women's episode and said the NXT women's roster is at its worst ever. It's a very provocative headline, and you know how much I love provocative headlines. Now, it got so many people's attention because a lot of folks, it was a mixed bag as far as some people agreed, some people disagreed. But let's see what they have to say, and then we're going to get into some of the reactions. But I will say this, NXT doing Rampage numbers with all women show. And I think, I'm not certain, I couldn't find the tweet. I think they may have tweeted out that it was going to be an all women show. But they lost 123,000 viewers. Now, to be fair, the show before the all women show was Spring Break-In, was sort of a branded show. So it was kind of always going to get that boost with it being a special episode of NXT. And they didn't put a lot of effort into the women's only show either. They just kind of threw some women's matches out there. But it did bomb. It bombed hard. You know, it did Rampage numbers. But let's see what they say. You know, if you know the internet, you know exactly what they were going to say. Everything was better before when they had all the indie stars and the Japanese girls and all that kind of stuff. And everybody sucks now. Everybody's green. Nobody knows anything. Mandy Rose can't work. Or let's put it into their proper wording, as they say. Rose might be the face of the women's division, but since she is the champion, but she isn't the only one that has resulted in that part of the roster feeling like it has been downgraded since transformation into 2.0. WWE is in the process of figuring out who exactly is going to lead the new look brand in the future, and perhaps even go on to become huge stars on the main roster. The first two female superstars to get the treatment were Cora Jade and Nikita Lyons. Again, without wanting to cause too much offense, both have a long way to go before they up to WWE standards, and even further to go before they reach the level of NXT women who came before them. You know, the women who are actually given time to get over. Because if you had looked at, Bayley when she first started, she wasn't very good. Charlotte wasn't very good when she started either. Neither was Sasha Banks. I mean, these people just were not good. When you look at how much experience somebody like, I don't know, somebody like Paige. I think Paige had a decent amount of experience when she came in because she had been working with her mom and everything. But she wasn't, the best ever at the time. The idea is they're taking women who spent years in it. Well, for starters, some of them who had a decade of experience before they even came to NXT, like Asuka or Ember Moon, who were already in the business for over 5 or 10 years before they even came to WWE. Io Shirai being another one. Versus people like Tiffany Stratton, who WWE signed recently within the last 5 years, because 5 years ago she was fucking 17 years old. But within the last 5 years, trained from scratch and gave her character from scratch. And these are the first time she's ever had to work real matches because she didn't have the benefit of house shows. So you're comparing a bunch of people like that, your Lash legends, and there's a lot of people on the roster who are mostly newer young ladies. You're comparing them to women who have had a decade or more to build up a name or build up their skill set at the very least. Not necessarily a fair comparison. Now, that being said, it is what it is, and the internet's going to do what it does. So let's get into some of the responses, because I think the responses are pretty fun, So, response, bad take. they're getting TV time, and they're exactly what NXT is supposed to be. Developmental, not people with 10 years experience on the indies. They took the brand back to what it was supposed to be the whole time, which is developmental, not a third brand. That is correct. Somebody says that it's a developmental brand. Duh, which is correct. Somebody says, so NXT went from must watch to AEW Dark. It wasn't must watch, considering people weren't watching it before. It was spending too much money on the outcomes that it was getting, even on the women's side. And of course, the article also bemoaned the firing of a lot of these women, like Dakota Kai and Ember Moon or whatever, which, who cares? Ultimately, Dakota Kai was on the show for 2 or 3 years. I don't remember anybody caring that much about her. I mean, it is what it is. Most people are smartly talking about it being developmental, but somebody says NXT consistently giving women multiple matches, segments, and promos with multiple characters developing, but it's at its worst to you. Yeah, that's the truth. Somebody says, no kidding, NXT's Divas division has been born. Yeah, it's a Divas division because all the women are cute. As to say that all the women were ugly before, which certainly wasn't the case. Characters are greater than 20-minute matches full of super kicks. I agree with that. I think that the roster is exactly what they want it to be. Their goal seems to be, quote, get the girls with the biggest arses and titties who can make old men horny and have them wrestle each other. They're essentially going backwards to the Divas era. I mean, obviously you have to have a large and ample chest like Elektra Lopez and Nikita Lyons. It seems like we have this conversation every week. I feel like we literally are having this conversation every single week now. Anyway. Somebody says it's somehow still better than AEW's though. Somebody said when they got rid of Persia, it was kind of dead to me. But the only women who can revitalize is Indy, Io, Nikita, Roxanne, and Cora. Lash needs more training. Lash Legend is terrible, but then again, she's in that same boat. She has not been there that long. The first matches we see of Lash Legend, of course, they're terrible. They're her first matches. Of course, they're not very good. She didn't have the benefit of house shows either, because I think they're going to start doing house shows again. So she may get better pretty fast. But as of right now, the only thing she's working is NXT Level Up and NXT Proper. And yeah, she's not very good right now, which should not come as a surprise to anyone. These women are killing it. Lash is getting better. Mandy is doing very well, but at least not keeping the title boring. Her tag partners are doing very well. And India Hartwell is amazing. I think y'all are just sick of seeing beauty in the ring and want to see rundown indies. Oh, man. Says, this couldn't be further from the truth. A lot of promising young and hungry women in that division, and Level Up is doing a great job of showcasing them. I don't think anybody's watching Level Up, to be quite honest. Even I don't watch Level Up. Somebody says, why would you put Lash next to Mandy in that picture? Mandy has been wrestling for years and has brought nothing but choppy, botchy matches to this division, along with her cringe-ass faction. Lash has been wrestling for like a year and has more charisma than Mandy ever has. Somebody don't know what the word charisma means. Somebody says, this is one of the better eras. Y'all just hate seeing attractive women succeed, which is, a lot of it is very true. Somebody posted something that I feel to be one of the biggest reactions ever for this. And it's Raven saying, what a mark. Fakest news ever. Is somebody. Greasy dirt sheet writers are at their worst ever. I'll agree with that. After seeing that disgusting display by Sean Ross Sapp, I will say that these guys are they're not bringing their best. They're not bringing their best when it comes to dirt sheet writers. I mean, that mid-ass pussy drying up. Oh, God. I couldn't send that to none of my bitches, man. I'm going to rub on your thigh. What the Moving on. According to weird, sweaty men, NXT women's roster is at its worst ever. Stop shaming them and shut up. Well, there's a lot of women talking now. How? So many women are being booked. We're getting actual characters, tons of backstage segments, multiple promos. That's a good point. A lot of these people seem to be very young, and he got Tiffany Stratton in his avatar, so he's not exactly an unbiased person here. It's truly not NXT developmental, or have we forgotten Mandy is indeed garbage, though? Oh. Somebody is trying to actually Somebody's trying to actually start a brigade against the guy who wrote the article. I almost never mention the names of people who write articles for that very reason, because sometimes people like to brigade these dudes. Like the dude just wrote his opinion. All right, come on. I don't have a horse in the race. Like, I'm always kind of defending the women are sexualized. That's the only part of the thing I really don't care about. Whether you think that they actually are any good or not, again, this whole thing is subjective. Most of them aren't very good because they haven't had a lot of experience. So, I mean, we'll see how they are in a couple of years. But we'll see. Somebody says, you better delete that. Do you remember the original NXT roster? I don't, because I wasn't paying that much attention to it. Isn't NXT supposed to be for the developmental? That is true. Somebody posted an Adele picture. I don't know what that's supposed to be. Listen, I know they're getting 20 plus female competitors on their show in a 2-hour period. And that's awesome. But have you seen the way they're presented? Have you heard how the commentators leer at them? Have you seen some of the stories they got these girls caught up in? What about it? That's what I want to know. What about it? Dakota Kai's been released. Io Shirai hasn't appeared since Stand and Deliver. Roxy is already caught up in a comedy feud. Kaylee Ray's had her name changed. The edict is for everyone to dress like Mandy Rose. It's like how women were treated in the Attitude Era. Oh, so we just believe what we saw on the Independents. Everybody's doing comedy, though. That's the one thing that, you get a lot of that shit. They're doing comedy. Like, just about everybody does comedy. Almost everybody, like when the whole Tony Storm thing happened. I'm like, how many times did motherfuckers like Kevin Owens get hit in the face with a pie? That shit happens all the time. Vince McMahon used to get covered in beer and milk and all kinds of shit. All of a sudden, Tony Storm, some delicate flower who couldn't get hit in the face with a pie without, crying and going home. If that's really why she quit, which, if that was the case, she would have just said that. But if that was the case, then bye. Who cares a fuck? Everybody in WWE does comedy. Stone Cold Steve Austin did comedy. The Rock did comedy. I think Undertaker was probably the only one that kind of avoided doing comedy his entire run. If Stone Cold and The Rock can do comedy, if they can be covered in beer and milk and all that kind of shit, then you can handle it too. Roman Reigns, not 3 or 4 years ago, was covered in dog food. I'm sorry. There is no excuse for anybody to complain about how they get portrayed in WWE when the top guys have been covered in dog food, covered in milk, covered in beer, been forced to sing with little hats and with guitars and shit. When Dean Ambrose walked around with a potted plant, when Chris Jericho absolutely embarrassed himself multiple times, when Vince McMahon pissed himself on television, you have no right to complain about how you are being portrayed on TV. Sorry. Those are the tippy top folks, like people who actually drew money. When guys like who drew money get, covered in dog food and everything, you should just be lucky to be on the fucking show. Now you can say that stuff shouldn't happen, which is your right to say. But I'm saying you look at the composite of everybody, just about everybody gets hit in the face with pies or some shit at some point. That's what happens. Somebody says literally leave Lash Legend alone. No, Lash Legend is awful. The haters are pressed by the women on NXT. That is true. There's being a shift from indie characters to actual characters. They're being showcased massively. Shut up. Also, love you, Mandy. More Adele? What's up with people in Adele all of a sudden? Pushing Lash on the cover when she's carrying the roster. I'm sorry, what? And her purse? I don't know. Somebody said, I wouldn't say it's at its worst state, but it's been mostly boring outside of Toxic Attraction and a couple of other characters. People have failed to realize old NXT proved, despite it being developments, it exceeded people's and companies' expectations, and people fell in love with the show. And I think this is a very good point because it says that it exceeded people's and company expectations, meaning expectations were actually quite low. And that's really kind of what it was for NXT. Nobody expected a lot out of NXT because it was developmental. And so the early takeovers were mostly what NXT was supposed to be. A couple of big shows were mostly a bunch of taped shows in a warehouse in the middle of nowhere, just like all of the other shows that they had been doing up to that point, up to like FCW, OVW, etc. And then they would do an occasional big show that was still not, ready for mass consumption. But once they created the network, they said, shit, we got to have content for this network. So they put NXT on it, which was a good thing because, people were now talking about NXT. But then they started populating NXT with all these goddamn indie wrestlers, and it became a whole different project, which took it off of where it was supposed to be. So the expectations increased. Well, the expectations increased because they were spending tons of fucking money on guys who couldn't draw any. Instead of focusing on trying to build people to be in a draw, they kept paying fucking Sammy Callahan or whatever to come to fucking NXT and do nothing but, sit around and chill and then quit. And a lot of those dudes quit. Did you pay someone to write this garbage? I imagine they did. It's not lost on me how people are making Lash the face of why they hate NXT. I've noticed that too. Tomorrow's episode is primarily women. Oh, so this was before. This was okay. So they did promote the episode as an all women's episode. So tomorrow's episode is primarily women and it's going to fucking rule. It didn't rule at all. It was not bad, but it tanked in the ratings for obvious reasons. No, it's not. It's actually a step up from what it was previously. I don't know about that one. Just somebody says, just say you're upset that the wrestlers have had 20 characters now instead of doing 20 super kicks and 5,000 false finishes, which is the indie style. And yes, a lot of these dirt sheets, that's what they want, and this was, somebody called them rude. It's called Developmental for a reason. They've got a ton of great talent to grow and develop. Plus, they're primarily featured on TV every week, unlike some places. Ooh. It's almost like NXT is meant to develop characters and wrestling skills while getting wrestlers used to being on TV and not an ending darling wonderland. Ooh. Somebody says, it's a developmental roster. They live rent-free in your heads, though. Somebody's talking about JC Jane's supremacy and posting a picture of himself bowing to JC Jane. Good Lord, that's creepy. Stop. Don't do that. It was never supposed to be the super indie that it was for that time period, and you guys can't let it go. That is absolutely true. And then the crazy thing is, why be number 2 at anything? Which is a classic line that if you have ever run anything, you would know. Once WWE saw that AEW was going to be the super indie, they were going to spend a ton of money on the indie talents and yada, yada, yada. And this was mentioned in the article, by the way. Then they decided to change directions. Why get into these high price negotiations with AEW for a guy like Adam Cole? Why do that? When the better move would be to just go younger. And now that we know that Tony Khan is not really good at recruiting, he only kind of signs up people who have a name already, which is what they said Vince does. It's weird how that works, right? When Vince used to hire people without seeing them, just because they heard their name. CM Punk was one of those guys, by the way. And he wasn't exactly hiring people himself. He was, had other people. Johnny H or somebody was hiring these people. It was a problem. It was a big deal. Vince should know these people, but Tony Khan does the exact same thing. He can't watch everything. The guy has 100 fucking companies that he's running or something like that. He can't watch everybody. So he's got some trusted advisors that suggest people to him, and then he brings them in and he gets the chance to see them on Dark or whatever like that. Vince was doing the same thing. You have your trusted advisors, whether it be Bruce, whether it be Michael Hayes, whether it be Johnny Ace or whatever, Jim Ross. They'll go out, they'll scour the world for these people. And then Vince will see you when he sees you. If you come to SmackDown or whatever, he'll see you then. He doesn't really watch NXT, doesn't really pay that close attention to it because he got 100 other fucking things that he's doing. These are how people who are CEOs of corporations, how they make decisions. They're not going to sit back and be looking at every single fucking, it's like when you go to work, you probably didn't get interviewed by the CEO of your company. You got hired by the fucking human resources manager. It's no difference here. The people at the very, very top don't know who you are. They've never seen you before. The wrestlers are the exact same way. Vince doesn't see everybody. He doesn't know what the fuck going on down there. He doesn't really care. So it is what it is. Let's see. More responses. At least now we see new talent almost every week instead of just the same 5 like it happened in the old NXT. Ooh. And with you see new women getting opportunities instead of just watching the same women be at the top of the division like it happened 1 or 2 years ago. That is absolutely true. And this is a very good comment. NXT did especially when it became the super indie that everybody loves so much. It got boring really fast because it was kind of the same guys at the top. And I think that's when it snapped for me. And I was like, NXT has got to go. I said before on this channel, I'll say it again. I think it was that Fatal 4-Way that went like an hour or whatever. That snapped NXT for me. I was like, fuck this show. I think it was Finn Balor, Tommaso Ciampa, Adam Cole, and Johnny Gargano. And I was just like, I don't want to see no combination of these guys ever again. At the same time, Io Shirai was just beating everybody too. I mean, it was just basically Io Shirai and then the rest of the division. Some of the stuff they were doing was okay, but it was basically Io Shirai, and then she was so far and above everybody else that it really wasn't much of a division in any way. It was basically your guys are fighting to see who's going to lose to Io next, which is, how people want it to be until they get bored of it. Then they hate it. They want a superstar, mega star, whatever you want to call it, until they get one. Then there that go. Somebody says, or y'all could have just gotten used indie talent with 6 years of experience instead of actual developmental talent. That's entirely possible. I think they should hire some people with some. I think hiring people from scratch is a tough thing for them to do. That's very tough. When you're getting people from college, and you're making them change careers. Like, yes, Bianca Belair, it worked. But there's going to be far more failures than successes in that scheme, which is, inevitable. If you hire people with a little bit more experience, at least they could fall in that mid spot, meaning you could have a lot more Cesaros, for every Seth Rollins that you might have, somebody who came from the independents, but they break the mold and they become a solid upper tier guy. You can populate your card with Cesaros, guys who have enough experience and know how to garner at least some tenuous connection with the audience, and it works for a little while, and you could keep them around. But when you got people who are coming from completely different careers, it's a bit more difficult, and especially since they're going to talk about they're looking at people every 90 days, I think they said, or every 6 months or something like that. They're doing talent churn. Like, that's not a lot of time. Somebody says the NXT women's roster is the best it's been since 2017. Asuka's reign of terror was boring. Shayna's reign of terror was boring. With the exception of a few, Triple H was pushing people based on the name they made outside of WWE, as opposed to homegrown talents who had pure charisma. This is a very good point. Now, I don't think that Shayna Baszler was boring. I don't think Asuka was boring. I think they were very good. But I think that giving them reigns of terror has led to people thinking that, NXT's women's division was a certain way, when it was basically just one person having a long run. Asuka had a really long run. Charlotte didn't really have a long run, neither did Sasha. But they pretty much set the standard, and then you had people from the outside come in and raise the bar a little bit. But it did kind of create unfair expectations because, some of these people, again, had longer careers than others. Somebody says, or is it just developmental again and y'all don't understand that? Because they're the only brand that fully and truly uses their women to the full capacity. Why is Lash on here with a clan leader? Why did Mandy Rose got to be a clan leader? What the fuck? Where did we get that from? These people are nuts, Putting Lash's picture with this post is intentional. The IWC can't help itself. Somebody says, Roxy, Indy, Gigi, EO, Saray, Alba Fire. I just don't know, bruh. I don't know. So it says, I honestly enjoy them a lot more now than before. It's just not the Indie Darling show anymore. That's the reason for the hate it gets. That is true. Now, it's hard to know whether they're talking about just the women or are they talking about NXT in general. Because the comments that you're making about the women, you can also make about NXT in general, if we're being honest. Somebody says, I understand what they're saying, but it's only because the indie darlings are gone, and it's the new home of developmental. As far as character and storyline progression, division is at its best right now. More women are featured now than ever. That is true, and that's probably why the ratings are down so far. Somebody says, Black and Gold had mostly indie talent with women's roster who already knew what to do. They just had to settle into the WWE standard. 2.0 has a mix of indie and homegrown who have not only figure out the business, but again, the WWE standard, aka developmental. So it says, I saw the women's season of NXT back in 2010. You're wrong. I don't remember it. Somebody please educate me on this. Yeah, Natalya was there, wasn't she? Damn, Natalya been around for a long time. Damn, Natalya is old. Natty is old. She's an old beezy. She old as hell. Mandy Rose killed the division. I'm sorry. No, she didn't do that. If it was dead before she got there, to be quite honest. I mean, to be quite honest, NXT took a huge hit right around the time Raquel Gonzalez won the title. Like, it was around that point that the division was kind of, all right, whatever, because Io Shirai wasn't the champion anymore. And they weren't going with Dakota Kai, and they weren't going to go with Candice LeRae. And I think the whole kerfuffle with the tag team titles also kind of screwed everything up, because they were supposed to get the title supposed to be, the tag team championships were supposed to be on all three brands, and then NXT got nixed out of that brand. So they had to create their own tag team titles, and then they had those tag team champions lose immediately. And then they got a short run. It was ridiculous. But it was around that time right there that the NXT women's division kind of bottomed out, you know. It was very tough for them to get back over there. Somebody says, hard disagree. Also, the fact you have Lash and Mandy on the front page of this lie is crazy. Maybe watch AEW. They have a hard time with their women, not NXT. Somebody posting pictures of Trump. I don't understand what Trump got to do with this. So I know NXT's women's division has a history of being monumentally stacked, especially in the period of 1.0, when indie phase populated the brand. But the current division is not as bad as y'all saying. Yes, there's more sex appeal and characters, but that's not on principle bad. Somebody says, yes, the division is at its worst roster ever because they lost Dakota and Candice. Somebody says, I'm so tired of wrestling media always making seem being pretty in wrestling as a bad thing. Like, since when being pretty means you're a bad wrestler? It's always the same dumb argument about what a real wrestler should look like. Oh, that's a good point. That's a very good point. Because it's almost like you can't do both. But we know that you can do both. And yes, WWE is superficial. But we know that. We know that, part of the reason Roman Reigns is in the position that he's in is because of how he looks. Part of the reason Randy Orton was around for as long as he was is because of how he looks. I mean, sure, you would like to think that they couldn't push a Dick Murdoch or a Dusty Rhodes today. You're probably right. And I don't think too many people will complain, to be quite honest, because you don't see them populating the indies and being top guys anywhere either. I mean, if you want to complain that WWE doesn't, where's the Dusty Rhodes on the independents? The fat jolly dude with the rhymes and the charisma, where is he at? I don't see him. I don't see him on the independents either. So I don't see him anywhere. The pot-bellied Dick Murdoch types. I mean, the NWA is the only place that's really pushed at, and who watches that shit except for people like me, right? I don't know. Somebody says, can we not put Lash on the cover at least? If you had to put a truly mid woman alongside the most mid at best champ, why not put Nikki, and he says table crashes. I guess they wanted to say Nikita Lyons. He says, what people need to realize is that this is a whole rebrand of NXT. The Black and Gold brand was mainly filled with indie talent, while the PC members were placed to the back. NXT 2.0 is more about homegrown talent, characters, and developmental feel. You can't compare. Okay. It says, it's crazy how this is a lie, plus Lash being on the cover is crazy. Another one. It's almost as if it's going through a transitional and bringing new development talent to the brand so they can learn. There's more people saying it's a developmental. It says, y'all get mad when pretty girls run the division. And somebody says, and it's 10 times more entertaining now than the main roster. Ooh, boy. They really going hard now. People been pressed about pretty women getting the spotlight will forever be funny. Y'all call anything with beautiful women, quote, the worst. But had Shayna and Rhea been in there feuding again, y'all would praise the damn brand as if those women aren't boring to see face off. I liked Rhea Ripley and Shayna Baszler. I still like them. I just think that they're kind of misused. And the last comment is literally better than any other women's division. Well, that's not difficult. Put it to you that much. It ain't that difficult. You know, most other women's divisions are absolute basura. All right, so what do you think about the women's division of NXT? Do you even care about this shit? What do you think about the ratings? The rating absolutely tanked with the women in NXT. It got 533,000 viewers, a 0.10 in the key demographic, down from the previous week. I don't know what it was year over year. I'm not sure. But they had an all-women's episode. So some people feel like they have to defend that. I thought it was a ballsy move, especially on a third brand that's on tenuous ground at best. But it is what it is. The NXT women's division is always going to get a lot of heat. So I think making these videos are kind of fun because why not? So let me know what you guys think. Like, share, and subscribe, and I'll talk to you guys later. Peace.